Hey everyone, this is Goku's son DBZ, and just quickly taking a little look through the artwork and stuff for, of course, Capcom Fighting Collection, which I've been waiting quite a long time for this. Gonna divide up into probably a couple parts looking at overall artwork, just appreciating it. As you know, I've done quite a few videos with physical, so I figured do one of these with digital. First up, with this one, I'm just gonna look at some of the Darkstalkers artwork and stuff, as that is a series I have a great amount of love for. I mean, just look at this beautiful art. I love the design, and interestingly, the way they kind of drew Lord Raptor, and this kind of reminds me a little bit of actually Blackheart from the Marvel vs. Capcom series, or technically Marvel Superheroes Origin. Of course, Dmitry Maximoff, my personal favorite character in the Darkstalkers franchise as a whole. I know many people love Morrigan, and I get it, but for me, Dmitry, because he just gives off that, like, classic old-school vampire look about him. In a lot of ways, I think Dmitry was some inspiration for, I think, characters like, specifically the redesign for Kazuya Mishima in Tekken 2. Because if you look at his suit, very much vampire-like design and similar artistically, but Dmitry was first. Funny enough, they both also have the same hairstyles. John Talbang, which is an awesome character, probably one of the coolest, if not about the coolest, honestly, werewolf character as a whole in the series. Because it's really cool, like a martial arts fighting werewolf. That's just cool. Plus, he has discipline. Good old Lord Raptor, which obviously I think was heavily influenced on David Keith, or whatever, from, of course, from Rolling Stones. A very interesting, like, redesign on the classic Frankenstein trope, but I always kind of appreciate this sort of reimagining design of, like, the whole Frankenstein concept. Of course, everyone knows the front face of the Darkstalkers franchise as a whole, though let's be honest, she's been in more things than any other character in the series, unfortunately. It's kind of sad, though. She is cool, but so many characters. I am actually surprised that this character actually made it into a couple of different games, personally. I do like the design and everything. Felicia, another one, probably the second, I would say, most popular character from the Darkstalkers series, given she's been in multiple games as well. Arguably one of, I think, the coolest villain designs in any Capcom fighting game, pure and simple. I just like the whole concept based on, like, ancient Eastern mythology with, like, cursed armor, which was taught in a lot of stuff in ancient feudal era stories in both actually Japanese as well as in Chinese culture as well. Of course, we have, like, the merman, fish. One of the few characters I can say I've never really played much with. Same for the sort of abominable snowman, or Bigfoot. Then we have the interesting robot. Then arguably one of, in my opinion, the coolest Capcom bosses of all time. And probably my top 3 favorite Capcom bosses ever. Pyron. Then some other promotional artwork. Then, of course, a little deeper look at some of the characters. And more basic illustrations and stuff for the different characters, as well as basic gameplay. This is some stuff I like to see as concept art and things, to see what characters may have actually originally looked like. And of course some original concepts for what Pyron, for his moves. See, now that's kind of cool, also seeing stuff like that. Basic slow-mo of, like, classic moves, like Dimitri's grab. Which is kind of similar to that of actual Yoshimitsu move. And some early concept designs for Dimitri. Okay, now that is a concept design I've never actually seen before for Dimitri. Got kind of like a Spawn influence, like paint on the face, which is kind of cool. I would say, given some of the design look and stuff, was heavily inspired probably by Todd McFarlane artwork. Now, that's very interesting. Definitely very different concept designs. Definitely some very unique, different looking possible designs for... Now this one, I get the feeling may have been a little bit influenced by Eddie, the mascot for, of course, Iron Maiden. That's kind of cool. Concept like a toy type concept for Frankenstein. Dang, that is a very different early design for... This is definitely a very different, unique concept design for Morrigan. Definitely the hair, very different. Interesting. Now this feels like something possibly influenced a little bit after maybe something like Thundercats. That more looks like more influenced off of like ancient Egyptian design, hieroglyphs. That kind of looks like something straight out of Ronin Warriors. Doesn't look like this character actually changed too much from the earlier art designs. Now that's very different. That's kind of like combining him with like Lizard Man from Soul Calibur. A Cyclops ape. Some interesting concepts. That's very different. Kinda looks like something I would have seen in like some early mech stuff from like the 70s and 80s. That almost looks like a Digimon. A little bit like the face kind of reminds me of a character at the end of Season 1 called a Pokemon. So I guess this was one of the early possible designs for Pyron. Very different. And that looks like it for that. And here we have one awesome piece of art with John Talbane on the front. Or not John Talbane, sorry. But, Donovan. Another great piece of artwork with Dimitri. Which I look forward to doing some record playthroughs of a couple of the Darkstalkers games. That was the #1 reason I got this collection, was for Darkstalkers. And to be fair, my very first opportunity to ever play Red Earth. Nice, more mature, more evolved on some of the art designs. I always did kind of like Raptor's honestly look. And how he's basically just an aging British rocker. Well, that's an interesting way to get out. Your coffin, or sarcophagus. A much more mature experience design of course, our succubus. Felicia, just probably daydreaming. See, this is what I'm talking about. Like, characters like, I just love the look and everything. That's the thing, like, when it comes to 2D, like, sprite work, Darkstalkers has some of the greatest sprite work I've ever seen. And you could tell quite a few, probably a lot of the artists who worked on this obviously worked on the Street Fighter 3 games. You can really tell given the sprite artwork of the different characters and gameplay. Oh man, now that's what I'm talking about. Pyron in his glory. And there is Maximilian, dude's favorite character in the series. Because he loves his giant sword-wielding, like, edgy characters. I like edgy characters, but not always with a giant sword. One of the more interesting characters that was introduced in the second game. And I actually got lucky to come back in stuff like Ultimate Marvel 3. Man, this souped up like ultimate version, man, of Dimitri. I love this. An interesting human design, of course, human version of John Talbane. I don't know what to think about him. And a more human version. That's actually kind of cool. An interesting, more like nightclub, I guess you could say, version of Morrigan in human form. Showing obviously back from when he was a ruler. That's kind of cool. And of course our dear little Felicia with her cats. I will say overall, I do think this is an interesting character, even if I never really got into him gameplay-wise. Another posing version of Pyron. One thing I can say about his design, obviously, with Donovan, he was obviously very heavily influenced by, I would say, things such as Akuma was a heavy influence. I like, honestly, these old games about, like, the personality they add to the character. Something you don't see a lot of as much nowadays, unfortunately. A lot of fine games in general nowadays. Sadly, it's just missing. I miss this era. I feel like, though, Capcom is starting to return back to their roots again, and I'm glad that at least some game companies are going back to their roots and listen to their fans. I mean, Capcom's pretty much been my favorite game company since I can remember, going all the way back to Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis. Interesting art style. The mischievous look on Felicia. That's a cool piece of artwork I've actually never seen before. Of course, the little girl that he protects, though she's actually, in fact, a very powerful being herself. I swear, some of this, like, classic Capcom artwork is just stunning and beautiful. I just wish... It's amazing the difference, like, art and everything was back in the 90s versus now. Though, Capcom has put in a lot of effort, even in some stuff you wouldn't think. Like the art gallery and stuff in Marvel Infinite, actually, they put some pretty good effort into. More than most companies nowadays. Just awesome. It's always cool getting to go back in time looking at a lot of this classic promotional artwork. And try to think back about how things were in the gaming industry back at that time. As, like, a lot of people today notice that even on highest difficulty, a lot of fighting games nowadays are not as hard as they were from, well, when I was a kid and teenager in the 90s. That's because it was the arcade age, and they were designed to separate kids from their quarters, was the whole purpose. Especially with Capcom and SNK, that's for sure. But nowadays, sadly, arcades are a thing of the past. They're even now basically dead in Japan, which sucks. Japan was the only place where really fine games were actually surviving. Though there are those few exceptional places. It's sad I don't see a lot of variety of art styles and stuff, and a lot of promotional artwork nowadays. Something else I really miss from back in the 90s is the fact you used to get really meaty, sometimes like instruction manuals and stuff, and effort was actually put into them. Like Capcom in the 90s put in a lot of effort into a lot of instruction manuals and stuff. I really miss it. Really, the 7th gen is when, like, manuals died out. There are those exceptional few things in, like, maybe indie games and things like that, showing a lot more things. I would like to see Capcom maybe go back, but it's probably asking for too much. Especially given that wouldn't necessarily mean a lot of paper and stuff, and because of so many strict environmental laws nowadays, unfortunately. Make a lot of that stuff impossible nowadays. Though at least you can get stuff like this digital to look at, and that is still very much appreciated. But at the end of the day, I really think Capcom, they've really been putting together a lot of, I think, really good collections. Whether it be, so far what I've seen in this, the 30th Anniversary Street Fighter Collection. Also, may I add, I really like the Darkstalker Resurrection on the PS3. Which, the sad thing is, I was like the only person I know that actually bothered to get a hold of a physical copy of that on PS3. Some of the earlier, like, ideas, shading, and everything. Really, when it comes down to it, of games and stuff, Darkstalkers as a whole, there's a reason why it has such a hardcore, dedicated fan base. People like me and many out there, like also Maximilian Dude and others. We love this series and have a passion for it because we appreciate all the time and effort that went into the designs, the artwork, the music, like just all the concepts and the mechanics, because they, like the first Darkstalkers, really heavily influenced like the Street Fighter Alpha series. So like these games really helped evolve a lot of Capcom fighting games, as well as a lot of the art stuff heavily influenced the Street Fighter 3 series. I just pray someday that we'll get maybe a new Darkstalkers. Hopefully this collection does very well and convinces Capcom to maybe do more of these. Like specifically, maybe please, Capcom, please, for the love of all, give us a collection specifically, love that, but specifically love that. But to me, not much will ever come close to these classic era stuff. And I'm gonna look at quickly Vampire Hunter 2 artwork and stuff, and in a second one of these videos I'll look at the Vampire Savior stuff. Obviously artwork showing that she's at the mercy, weak to obviously Donovan. Oh, that's it. Okay, well, actually finished it all this time. Here we have, of course, the cover artwork for the original version of Vampire Savior for the Sega Saturn cover artwork, because this is what's on my box case for my Saturn game. Always loved this piece of art. Of course, there we go again, my guy Donovan. At first, they try to make him, I think, more of a villain. As time has gone on, I've always considered Donovan maybe a bit more of like a anti-hero of sorts. Or not Donovan, but Dimitri. Though it seems like they kind of replaced that idea and made Donovan the anti-hero character. Which is a shame, because I always felt like this was more like a bit more edgy, like evil version, sort of like Ryu, or I guess in some ways he's kind of a bit like Akuma in some concepts. Though he wants to roll over, of course, obviously, the demon realm. John Talbang looking is awesome. And I like seeing some of the more refined designs of the characters. And like I said, I love how they do give character to a lot of personality. I think in a lot of cases there's more personality in the sprite artwork characters than there are in a lot more realistic characters nowadays. I mean, like, I think just this picture shows you that Felicia is obviously good-hearted, even if not necessarily wearing very much clothes. But, well, fan service. And there's one of my other personal favorite characters throughout the franchise, which amazes me more people don't talk about. I mean, honestly, the concept of, like, a really cool, like, just badass looking character based around the ancient myths and legends of, like, curse-possessed armor, I just think is honestly really cool, and I'm surprised I haven't seen more characters like in fighting games like this. It's just unfortunate. And seeing that face there with the stomach mouth and stuff makes me wonder if he wasn't a bit of inspiration for Jinpachi in Tekken 5. Would not surprise me knowing Harada. Looking back, Harada was kind of a fan of Street Fighter and stuff himself. At least with the artwork and things. Definitely one of the more interesting characters that they add to the series. Gameplay style, definitely one of the most unique female fighting game characters I've ever seen. BB Hood, very deceiving, but she's like S tier, and honestly in the game as well as she's up there. I would probably put her at least A tier in Marvel vs. Capcom 2. BB Hood is ridiculously good. It's a shame we've never really gotten to see Lilith in anything outside of this game. It's unfortunate, like, all we've seen really in our stuff is basically Morrigan sprite with, like, a Lilith color skin over the spray, and that's it. And I feel like there's a lot of personality and stuff. Look in the comics and things. There's a lot to the character of Lilith. I just wish Capcom would have done more with this character, honestly. So much wasted potential. Another character that has not really ever been seen outside of Vampire Savior, which I think this is actually a really cool design character. I'm surprised I've not seen really any other like bee or like insect influenced fighting game characters, honestly. And there we go, the big boy himself, the big baddie of the game, Lord Jeddah. Which, arguably, he is an awesome character. I still think Pyron is my favorite of the antagonists, but I do love the play style and everything and design of Jeddah. I mean, he's arguably one of my favorite characters in Marvel Infinite, and I couldn't believe the fact that they actually brought him back in Marvel Infinite. The only other game he ever really appeared in was Capcom Fighting Evolution. And more classic promotional artwork. Seeing them advertising, obviously, the new, at the time, added characters. All 4 characters, though specifically some, really have a lot of personality in their art design. showing some of the new moves and things. Articles obviously mostly focusing around the character Lilith, which does play very much the same as Morgan, obviously, and for obvious reasons. And more basically just explain the energy meter and everything. Mechanics. And then it's basic, just special move lists for the characters. Some of the basic concepts for like the opening cinematic or intro to the game, obviously, form me into what would become Jeddah. Which would become obsessed over creating the fetus of God, as referred to as in the game, and which becomes a very freaky final boss stage, that's for sure. But it's very memorable because of how freaky it was. I like how they just show like basic concepts and stuff of how the opening is going to work. And then the basic sort of design of how like the main character select screen will look. And then concepts of some of the stages, which arguably Darkstalkers has had some of the coolest, I think, fine game stages. And displaying very much the different like parts of the world where the creatures came from. This one's obviously like a luscious jungle and stuff. Always did kind of like this subway stage, I thought was awesome. Obviously a place for torture. And this stage, one of the freakiest stages, but still really cool for its unique design and art concept of this freaky demon train. And there we go, the freaky stage, Fetus of God. That thing when its eyes open up and stuff when you beat Jeddah and stuff, and it freaks out. It just gets freakier and freakier, and the music helps that feel as well. And just gain some basic concepts of a lot of like their special moves. I will say, surprisingly, when it came to Marvel Infinite, how good they actually were able to transition Jeddah's design and stuff from his classic 2D art style to 3D, and they actually did a very solid job, honestly. And I'm glad they kept his original, like, special moves. And then pulling him down to use his special. And obviously, Dimitri drinking blood. Ah, yes. Nun costume Felicia. Love those crazy expressions. The last bit, pretty cool piece of art. Arguably, probably one of my favorite pieces of art involving Pyron, pure and simple. And her holding Lilith. And that's it for this edition at looking at gallery stuff. Next time, we will be looking at artwork for Super Gem Fighter, also Puzzle Fighter, and Street Fighter. And then, probably after that, we'll look at Cyberbots and Red Earth. See y'all again soon enough. Same YouTube time, same YouTube channel. Stay safe.